Who remembers the BJ and Bill Show all those years ago on WOLZ? Well, many have said they missed the show, and guess what? They're back. Welcome to the BJ and Bill podcast.
Welcome to BJ and Bill, the podcast, a part of the Podcast Playground Network. You can find us in many locations like Spotify. I told you if I ad-libbed this, I was going to blow this intro, didn't
You
I?
kind of did. iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere. We're everywhere.
And of course, that 5-star review, Bill and I will appreciate so very much, because that will take us up the podcast ladder, as they say.
Podcast ladder. Yes, it will. So there you go.
So
have you recovered from a weekend of basketball?
Oh, have I recovered?
As he sits there wearing his Warriors baseball hat.
And well, wait a minute. Wait, let me stand up.
Oh, and he's got his Orlando Magic.
Oh,
it's an Orlando Magic versus, wait a minute, when is that from?
That was when my son took me to the Warriors game playing the Magic.
He's got a Magic t-shirt and a Warriors hat on. Interesting.
Yeah.
Good for you. Look at you.
This is a / Orlando Magic Golden State Warrior
t-shirt. Right.
I mean,
yeah. Cool.
I know when I originally got it, I told you how the story went. Like, he took his kids too.
Right.
And, he's like the good old dad who likes to, buy things for his kids.
Right.
So they got these really expensive, cool jerseys and everything.
Wow.
And they were all excited. And then he got a free t-shirt for spending over, so much dollars. He got a free Orlando Golden State t-shirt.
So
Dad got the t-shirt.
Dad got the free t-shirt. Very nice. But hey, no complaints. That's nice. So there you go. Good for you.
I'll take it.
What's that?
I said, I'll take it.
For you basketball fans out there, yesterday, Saturday and Sunday were just, it was nonstop. And I was pretty well locked in for the whole thing, especially with my Cleveland Cavaliers, who took care of business against Miami in Cleveland. Game 1, Cleveland won 121-100 there. It was a little closer at times, but I think Cleveland was in control pretty much the whole time. Your game was the late game last night. The Warriors and Houston tried to make it close in the second half, but eventually the Warriors took over. So, yeah, Houston lost to Golden State 95-85 by 10 points there. And if you had that old sportscaster, what was his? I forget. Steve something Sports Machine. If you had Memphis and 50, you lose. Memphis Grizzlies got got just wiped out by OKC, the Oklahoma City Thunder yesterday. 131-80. That's embarrassing.
And it makes me wonder, because a lot of times, like when you get beat by 20 or maybe even 25, 30 points in a game,
right,
you'll come back in game 2 with a little bit of a revenge and a little, like we need to show them who we are.
Sure.
But when you get beat 51 points, I mean, it is like you go to the locker room and you just you say words like that you should not say on this podcast.
Right.
And you're going, what the heck happened?
What happened there? I get it. It was, and as you texted me about halfway through, even Oklahoma City's best guy, that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA, was not having his best game. So it was impressive. It really was. So anyway, I watched basketball all day. Well, and because really, what else am I going to do? I'm waiting for my eye surgery later this week. So as you hear this podcast comes out on a Wednesday. Thursday, I will be somewhere in an operating room in Gainesville, Florida. So looking forward to that. Not at all, but I want it to be over with, for gosh sakes.
And I'm going to the corporate office.
You're going to the Podcast Playground corporate office in Fort Myers, Florida.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Going to be there for a few days.
Very nice.
Hey, we have a guest coming up.
We do.
But before we get to the guest, I did a little prep here.
Okay.
Because, you and I, the BJ and Bill show, originated from Southwest Florida
Well, yeah.
in Fort Myers.
Yes, that's where everybody knows us from.
And you know that we are on the big podcast network.
Yes. Podcast Playground.
And I just want to go through some broadcasters. If you live in Southwest Florida, you may know.
Okay.
Jeff Edwards. He does Gut Punched. He actually started with you at 96 Super Q. And then I think he kind of, ventured off into sales. Oh, he wasn't with you when you were at Super Q?
Well, I would have to hear it or see his face because I worked with so many guys that name's not familiar, but I don't remember. I'll be honest, I don't remember.
Yeah, Jeff Edwards started at Super Q, and then he
Gotcha.
ended up, being a salesman at 96 K Rock because
Right.
they eventually bought Super Q.
Yes.
And he's been there until like the last couple months when he finally retired.
Amazing.
And he does a podcast on the Podcast Playground Network, Gut Punched. Another personality you may know from Southwest Florida, Jeff Zito.
Of course.
He was on 99X and then, of course, 96 K Rock.
Yes.
He does Celebrity Jobber, where he talks to celebrities and asks them what they would have been if they never got that big break and became a celebrity.
That I admit I have not listened to that enough. That's an interesting show.
Yeah, I enjoy that. And then another very interesting show for those of you, and you probably don't know his name, but if you were in radio or broadcasting at all, you know his voice. And if you ever listen to a Fort Myers, Southwest Florida radio station, oh, you've heard his voice because he was like everywhere. Rick Peterson went to Podcast Land, and he's doing the Always Wondered podcast. Ramo G, he was right down the hall from us.
Yes.
And he's with Memphis, who was also right down the hall, but we were already gone after Memphis got to town.
Okay.
They work with my son and do the Outcast podcast and the Vinyl Boys, where they, go through an album and
play a real album, a real vinyl album. Love that.
Yeah. And a new podcast is coming to the Podcast Playground.
Now who?
Stan, our upcoming guest today.
Really?
Yes. And everybody knows him with Haney.
Stan and Haney.
Of course, Haney unfortunately had that stroke and is still not, and we're going to get an update on how Haney is doing, but he's going to team up with Jeff Edwards, who used to be at B103.9, and they're doing something. We're going to get not Jeff, but we're going to get Stan on, and we're going to find out what that's all about.
Wow. All these old radio. Well, what else do you do if you're an old retired or semi-retired radio guy and there are no jobs for, unless you're in New York City or Chicago or LA, most of these radio stations now are satellite or computer or, AI or whatever, because they don't want to pay for real live personalities, quote unquote. And so what are you going to do? You're going to do podcasts, just like BJ and Bill.
Yeah.
Welcome to the family. Well, that's awesome. That's fun. So I can't wait to hear that. So that's good. That's good.
Now Stan said he'd be standing by. So let's cross our fingers and hope that Stan is on when we come back.
Now that we've publicized him. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we'll talk to Stan at another date. Maybe we'll have to say, but I confirmed with him last night. And so hopefully he's going to be willing, ready, and whatever. He's going to be next.
Are you ready to do that now? Let's take a quick break and we'll be back with our guests. Stand by, everybody. This is going to be some amazing radio, or podcasting at least, and we'll find out in just a minute.
Welcome back to BJ and Bill, the podcast. Of course, if you remember us from Southwest Florida radio days, I know you're going to remember this next voice that's coming on the, I guess I can't say radio, podcast. And I'm not even going to attempt, and maybe you don't want me to anyway, to say your last name, but ladies.
Oh, you can. Nawalonic.
What is it?
Nawalonic.
Yeah, I'm just going to call you Stan.
Well, that's why I never used it professionally, BJ.
It's good Eastern European. I saw that and I went, that's good Eastern European.
It sure is.
Yeah,
So-
so's mine, but I've been William Steven Skłodowski for 50 years. So
That is a good Eastern
Polish,
European name. It
good
sure
Ohio
is.
Polish there. Yeah.
Yakshamash.
And I've just been BJ
Korea.
Odom for the last 70 years. What can I say?
Can I just say something right off the bat? And I know before we started this, I was asking Bill if we had ever crossed paths, and nothing direct or memorable with us in all these years of broadcasting. But you and I, BJ, go back a long time as both friend and foe. You were competition to me, and you worked in the same building as I did briefly. And I just have a very quickly a great story. I got a few stories about you, but one of them was a great story when I first came to Fort Myers and to do radio. I was in town with my old partner Joe, who's since passed away, but we were making headway. We were turning heads. We were getting newspaper articles, and somebody came up to me, and I don't know who it was, and said, "Don't get too big for your britches. You haven't made it here until you make BJ Odom money." And I'm like, well, really, who's this guy? And you were like, you were king of the buckwheat at that point in time. And I said, well, I don't know what he makes, but I'm going to beat that one day. And that was an ongoing joke for 25 years. You haven't made it till you make BJ Odom money.
Wow.
And then
Mr. Odom froze on us. Oh, geez.
Well, of course, that would make him freeze.
That made him freeze. That's amazing. So while we wait for BJ to reconnect, I'll ask you, because I know you were, it was Super Q days way back.
I came after Super Q.
You did, because I was actually morning at Super Q before BJ Odom, before I met BJ Odom. Way back in the building out in the sticks in Estero.
Yeah, sure. Oh, well, we worked in that building. Well, you remember WAKS, right?
Sure.
It became KISS.
Yes.
That was way out by where the Fox 35 studios are now. And it was a dump. And when we first came to Southwest Florida, that's where the station was, the K-Rock's competition.
Right.
And then we moved to Marina Town Lane, and then Beasley gobbled them up.
Right. So I was actually, like I said, I was at K-Rock back in that was Dave, damn it, my memory's gone. But anyway, I did mornings there for a couple of years with a guy named Steve, BJ, what was Steve's name? I forget.
I don't.
You don't remember either.
I was
BJ
never
Odom
there.
Jeff Edwards used to work at Super Q.
Yep.
Who I have a lot of respect for, and he was in the sales department at K-Rock just until recently. He just retired. I know he's got a podcast going on. I've got a podcast going on. I got to say something else. BJ, your son was so far ahead of the curve as far as the internet goes and digital. Here I am. I'm working for your son now, doing my podcast, Beyond Mount Rushmore, with my buddy Jeff Hickox.
We're all working for his son now.
But the fact of the matter is, Bill, is I remember when he was at the radio station, and he was getting into internet radio and digital stuff, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to sink my own money into something. I'm a broadcaster. They're paying me to do this. And you want to go and mess with your internet stuff and your make-believe radio station, you go right ahead. But you know what? He was so far ahead of the game, because that's where it's at right now. I'm shocked.
Yep.
And he's a great guy. You got a good son, BJ.
I'm going to tell a quick story, and you'll be able to relate to this because you worked with Joe Scott, and he was one of those guys that was like, if you were on another radio station, he would talk trash like a professional wrestler.
Oh, you have to.
Yeah.
I learned that. You know that.
Oh yeah, I know that.
There was two things: either hit them hard and hit them low, or act like they don't exist. Well, we knew you were there.
Well, the funniest thing, and I want to tell you this story because this is like in my latter days of doing radio, and I was, kind of sickly. I was looking for the heart transplant and everything else. And, Joe was on 96 K Rock at the time. And he said that, there should be an opening soon at Oldies 95 because I wasn't long for this world because I was so sick, which was, I sat there at home, laughed my ass off. My son actually heard that and he went to work at, for Beasley at K Rock.
I know he did.
And he went to Joe, all guns a blazing. You never talk about my dad. You talk about my dad again. I will come in. I will beat you like you've never been beat before. And he came and told me that story. And I said, Joe is like, he's like the biggest little wimp in the world. He's a great guy. And he's,
I learned very early on. Both Joe and I grew up and got it. Joe and I were partners long before we got to Southwest Florida. And we knew a lot of program directors back in the day who always used to go with the philosophy, and we loved it because that's how we did radio. Always act like you're the guy in the bunker. Always act like you're the one getting kicked on and fight. I don't care if you're number one or just act like everybody's out to get you, and don't ignore them. And that's what you had to do. But it was part of the game. And I'm upset that you don't remember because Haney and I went gangbusters when we found out after your heart transplant that they went and fired you.
Yeah, you were the one that like jumped on
kidding.
board.
I'm about ready to cuss right now. Yes, it was Haney and I, because it was Haney and I were partners at the time, and we went and found out. We said, wait a second, how cruel and ridiculous can radio be where you have, let's face facts, you were a well-established legendary voice in Southwest Florida, and you had an effing heart transplant, and your company said, well, can you come back to work? You can't. Well, we're gonna have to let you go. And I think it was just for a brief period of time, because I don't know the business end of it, but we went and tried to get you back in Beasley to work because they had left you high and dry after a heart transplant.
Yeah. At the time, I think I probably called it the best example of corporate blunder ever.
Yes.
You could have brought this guy back on a chariot, like triumphantly, like he's back.
Yeah.
But no, we're firing his ass. And I'm oh my God.
Paying him for the PR alone.
Exactly.
The attention it would have brought that radio station and brought that company alone would have paid his salary.
Yes.
But that's
that's the short-sightedness.
Don't get me going because I don't want to say anything bad about my company.
You got the shaft too.
Well, and I will try to do this delicately so that nobody's feelings get hurt.
It's been 20 years. Come on.
Well, no, it ain't not for him.
Let me tell you something, and you guys both know this. When we got into this business, a lot of the radio stations were mom and pops. An old man owned the radio station. His family run it. Well, Beasley's were like that, and it was the best company in the world. I loved those people, loved them, still do to some of them. But it became less of an art and family and creative, and became, when they went public, it becomes a business.
Yep.
And you no longer are, Bill and BJ and Stan. You're employee number 377219. And the higher up you go, they don't know who you are. And I'm going to give you a great example on how the radio business has changed. My partner for 33 years here in Southwest Florida, and I knew him back when he and I worked together on the Space Coast over in Melbourne. But Mark Haney and I worked together for a long time, and we did a lot charity stuff for people. We did a lot of things. If somebody in the business was hurting, we would go and help them. Well, back over 2 years ago, my partner, Mark Haney, had a stroke. He lost his ability to speak. And by the grace of God, our ratings were still phenomenal. I mean, we were still number one in 2 different demographics with persons. But he really, it ended his broadcast career. The thing he loved most, he couldn't speak. And he couldn't work for a long time because he was in the hospital. And the local people at the radio station said, let's do a charity thing for him. He's going to have medical bills that insurance isn't going to cover. Let's go and put together something. And they shot it up the ladder. Well, like I just said, you become a number when you're up there, and attorneys get a hold of it. And the attorneys say, well, that's playing favoritism. You open yourself up to lawsuits if somebody else is sick in the building. Let's not do anything. And that I said, that is not the radio that I knew 20 years ago.
Well, you guys, like you said, you came to my defense when I got let go. I had all my hospital bills. You were talking about my charity, and I remember at the time, Beasley actually contributed.
They did
to my fund. I mean, you was the ones that you know.
That's why I got to be so careful with what I say. The Beasleys, the family, are some of the most wonderful human beings that I know. They lots of money, but they're very humble people. They come from North Carolina. They're good people. You know that too, BJ.
Yes, I do.
But then it becomes a business. Radio itself, broadcast radio, was hurting, and you have to make decisions about what you want to do. Do you want to get into this digital market? Do you want to stay local on the air? Do we need to consolidate? Do we need to lay off? Do we need to go and what DEI and everything else, making sure you don't hurt somebody's feelings, making sure you don't identify them wrong. I mean, it goes on and on to the point where it becomes so homogenized and so corporate. They're not the ones making the decisions. It's attorneys making the decisions, and corporate people making decisions, and loan people and bankers. And it's on that aspect, I'm glad I'm not in the business anymore, because it's not like it when the 3 of us were coming up.
You bet.
And that's like with Cheap Channel too. I'll call them Cheap Channel.
Well, they ruined it for everybody. They were the start of it.
They did.
They were the ones that started this whole corporate world. And as Bill will say, the day after my transplant, I called him and was on the air and was saying, hey, I should be back in 6 weeks. They said I should be good in 6 weeks. And we went on and on for about 20 minutes live on the air, me from my hospital bed the day after my transplant. And boy, as soon as that call was over, Bill was getting his you-know-what reamed by management because they'd already replaced us.
Yeah. They had already made that decision. Of course, they hadn't told us, of course.
Of course not.
Yeah, no. But the gears were already in motion to replace both of us. Absolutely. And
but
even though I had been doing the show myself for like a month.
Yep.
So yeah,
that's different too. People don't realize, and I say this with all due respect, BJ, people go and say, oh, I hope he's doing okay. Well, you know what, Bill? A lot of responsibility on you. You essentially during that time on the air had a gun to your head. You better perform and keep the show going, or else. And the pressure on you was incredible. And in
the
end, it didn't mean a damn thing because they'd already made the decision.
There you go. I got to ask a question though, BJ, because and if this is total naive, I'm not a doctor. What did it feel like to get a heart transplant in somebody else's heart? You see those movies where it's like the phantom other person living in there. You feel a little different. What did it feel like? And do you know whose heart you got? Did you get a woman's heart, a man's heart, an Asian heart, an African heart? What did you get? And how did it feel?
I got a young man's heart. And then of course, 2015, I got the kidney. I got a woman's kidney. And then I started, doing hair and doing, floral arrangements.
Today, by the way.
but
I remember, Stan, I remember BJ telling me the story when he was waiting for the heart. And I have told this story 1,000 times because it made such an impression on me, that BJ reported to me that his doctor told him, and I quote, you've come looking for a heart at the right time. And BJ's like, what the hell, right time? And the doctor, without batting an eye, said, spring break.
Oh, you think about that.
Because young people are coming to Florida and
Getting
some
careless.
of them aren't going home.
Yep. Wow.
Amazing.
And that's what happened with you, BJ. Is that you
I got a young, let's just say I got a young male. I've got comedy friends that knew when I got my heart transplant, and they were from Tampa. And there was a gentleman who had a motorcycle accident with his girlfriend. He was on life support. The day they took him off life support, he was an organ donor. I got my heart. They put the heart in. They said as soon as they let the little clamps off, after they transplanted it, usually they have to give it a little electric zap. They just let go of it and it started beating on its own.
Wow. That is
just like the movies.
You know what? How many years ago was that?
We're over 22 years. It was in March of 2003.
And we thought 22 years ago how far heart transplants had come. I bet you now, and you looking at the way the procedures go now, it's even been leaps and bounds since then, right? I
mean, probably.
The getting an infection was or the heart rejecting was a big thing, wasn't it?
Yes, and it still is.
But he takes his medications for that.
I'm going to tell you a story because, you kind of brought that up about, did you feel any different or anything? I do another podcast called The Gift of Life, which is,
I know you do,
which is about organ donation. I talk to different people with their stories. I talked to a donor mother, and this was a hard one for me to do. I actually get teared up sometimes when I talk about it, but she heard her son's heartbeat in another man. And I asked her, I go, how did that feel? And, she explained, what it felt like. And she had her daughter with her, which was a grown daughter. Now, listen to this story. It really gets transplant patients, but even if you're not, it's going to get you. So when they were leaving, the gentleman who got the heart picked up some leaves off the ground, threw them at the daughter. The daughter started crying immediately. And the guy, I have no idea. I'm sorry. I don't even know why I did that. I'm sorry. And the mother says, no, you don't get it. Her brother used to do that to her all the time.
That's the effect. The hairs are standing up on me here.
Right?
Wow.
Right?
I bet you there's got to be something like that. There's got to be something like that.
Well, I will say this. I was not a football fan. Of course, the year I got it, 2003, that's the year the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl one of their times.
Yeah.
And I was never a football fan. And now on a Sunday, I won't miss a Buccaneers game. I am a diehard Buccaneers fan. Was it because I was in the hospital, or was it because my donor was a giant Buccaneers fan?
Now tell me about your kidney. What now, is this just? And again, I'm naive, but I want to know about these things. And it's not like you and I talk every day. Did you do it? Was it based on abuse? Did you punish your body so much? Was it the medication that you were taking?
It was the medication, yeah.
Because I got to just say this, and I'm not here to go and talk about health so much. Save that for your other podcast, all right? This is supposed to be about fun, and so far it's been not fun. But I have, in the last, say, 3 years, and part of that is why I'm glad I'm not doing a show every single day, is my health started to really begin to deteriorate. And a lot of it has to do with medication. Well, I had a heart attack back in 22 and 5 stents put into my heart. Luckily, I had the echocardiogram thing done just last week, pumping perfectly after 2 years. But they started looking at my blood work, and my blood sugar's starting to raise. They're worried about my kidneys because they're at a level, I think it's one number above kidney disease. They're looking at my liver, and they're seeing cysts on there. They're looking at my lungs and finding a section of my lung that doesn't look too good and all that stuff. And I start reading the stuff. I'm going to take a multivitamin. I'm going to take this. This is heart healthy. if you take something to lower your cholesterol, it hurts your kidneys. If you take something
And
that
liver.
is good for your kidneys, it hurts your liver. If you take this, that raises your blood sugar, but it's supposed to bring your cholesterol down. I've got more things I'm fighting against where the only thing I can possibly do is drink water and breathe air. That's about it, because everything's breaking down on me.
Well, they say too, it's all about balance, all your enzymes, all your, yeah. And that's what, as a transplant patient, they're always trying to balance things.
Come on. You mean to tell me there's not on a 4th of July and the barbecue's going, you don't want yourself a couple of hot dogs and a nice greasy cheeseburger off and maybe a couple of ribs?
He doesn't just want them, he eats them.
And maybe I'll do a gummy or two here too, because I got bad health. I want to take it serious just for a second,
Sure.
because I know that people that are listening to this show really want to know, because especially if they know you're on. If you can, how is Haney doing? If you can,
I'm gonna try to explain this. And first of all, Haney's as healthy as an ox, and we don't see each other as much as we'd like to, because he lives on the other coast of Florida now.
Oh.
And he's with his family, because that's where he's from. That's where we first started working together, was on the other coast of Florida, and that's where his family is, and that's where he needs to be.
Right.
But his checkups that he had were good. But everybody will go in and say, how's Haney doing? Is he getting better? Well, he suffered a stroke. It's not like having a cold or the flu bug or recovering from a surgery. He had a traumatic brain injury. And so you can get better, and he has gotten so much better. But you're going to have to learn that there are going to be certain limitations for some for years to come, and for some a lifetime to come.
Right.
That's been just about 2 years since his stroke. When he first had it, he couldn't speak. He could just make a noise. The first word he learned to say, believe it or not, and he used it to the best of his ability, was the F word. If he didn't want something, he'd just blurt it out. now, if we talk on the phone, if you listen and let him speak slowly, you can understand what he's saying. But people are, hey, when's he getting back to broadcasting? You don't understand. He's first got to clear the hurdle of being able to communicate for himself.
Right.
And then from there, once he masters that, and I asked him, because I asked you, what does it feel like to have a heart transplant? I would ask him, what does it feel like when you're having a stroke and you can't speak?
Right. And
he said to me, in so many words, he said, I can think of everything I need to say. I know what I have to say. It's just, it doesn't come out. It's almost like I'm fat-tongued, and it doesn't come out the way that I want it to come out. He thinks the sentences and everything just like he always did. It's coming out of his mouth. And the thing that makes it even harder for him, and I've talked to some doctors about this, and the mind is an unbelievable thing. His handwriting is the same as his speech. He knows what he wants to write, but if he can't think of a word to say, he sees the word in his brain to speak, he can't say it, or he can't write it either. It's the speech and the handwriting are tied in together. And I was talking to a doctor one time. He goes, if he understands what's going on, and he says, consider it a good thing. I said, why? He said, depending on where in the brain they have strokes, it's a reverse thing. They speak perfectly well, but they're speaking completely incoherently to what you're asking them.
Right.
So their speech is nice and smooth, but they're not making any sense whatsoever. That's how the brain works.
That idea of being almost, that terrifies me. That possibility of being trapped in there, and I'm pointing to my head. It's like, I know what's going on, but I can't communicate
that
it to
is,
the out. And if you can't
imagine?
communicate it, people don't know, or
Yeah.
Unless you can eventually, like you said,
That
like
was his
Stan eventually
profession.
could communicate it.
I would have rather have him had a stroke that left his right side paralyzed, or
Right.
he had to be in a wheelchair. Horrible thing to say, but if he still had the ability to speak, he'd be able to earn a living. He lost the one thing that he needed most. His livelihood was speech, and to look at him, you'd never say, "Oh, he looks exactly the same." There isn't a muscle on his body that is paralyzed. He looks like he did the day before his stroke. It's only his speech. Wow. And that's frustrating to him, a guy that loved to talk. And I would joke around him. I said, when your ability to speak comes back, do you have some things you want to tell people? And he used to just smile and he'd go, F yeah.
Yeah.
He could start a podcast about strokes.
If he could go and do, see, now that would, if somebody would want to go and help him go and do that, it's you have no idea, because in radio, everything's boom, 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 boom. And you have to think of multiple things at the same time. If you're having to force your words out, that moment's long gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't, I mean, you and I, the three of us know, if you're doing something and you're not using a script, what you're doing is grabbing the little words and phrases that fly by, and you grab them and use them. BJ, you know that too, with your comedy, with your magic, your ad-libbing that you got to do. Oh, I got one more quick story. Another good BJ Odom story.
We want to hear them all, so you're fine.
I gotta go. And this is, again, a credit to what a great guy BJ is. And, there's people that are nice guys. There's people that are jerks. You're genuinely a nice guy. I don't necessarily like your broadcasting, but you're a nice guy. But I was fresh off my divorce to my first wife, and I had a little girl. She was my daughter. She was probably 4 at the time, 4 or 5. And we were at the flea market, and you used to have a little stand, a novelty stand at the flea market. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was taking it, and my daughter saw you doing something over there, because you were always playing with the toys and messing around. And she wanted to go over there. And I glanced up. I go, oh, holy geez, that's BJ Odom over there. Went, said hi to you. She's looking at this stuff. You must have done a 20 minutes worth of magic for her in the hidden coins, the balls, the rings, all of that stuff. You entertained her for a good 20 minutes. And as we were leaving, she looked at me, she goes, he was nice. That was fun. I said, yeah. I said, I've known him for a long time, but I thank you for that now. You in a very difficult time in my life, and I'm sure hers, you gave her a little entertainment.
Well, you probably get that too. How many times, especially when you were on the air, do people come up to you and say, you don't realize this, but I was going through a really rough time. And if you weren't there on the radio, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know how many times.
How do you guys handle that?
You have too, probably.
How do you guys handle that? I don't take compliments well.
I don't either, Stan. I
in.
never have.
I
don't know why.
I'm like, thank you. I'm glad I could help.
Yeah,
I mean,
you try and be friendly, and BJ and I would be sitting, we've talked about this on the show many a time. We'd be sitting at Mel's Diner, of course, having breakfast or something after the show. And people would come up to us, or we would, and BJ did this story literally 2 weeks ago, where we were sitting there listening to a conversation at the table next to us, and they're talking about our show. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, we got to go over there, at least say hi or whatever. And then people get all fluttery, and they get all, wound up about it and everything. And it's like, it's okay. We're just a couple of guys on the radio. It's okay. But yeah.
Because you have to admit, and the three of us, I can admit this wholeheartedly. As far as the entertainment spectrum goes, we're really down there. We're low. We're just below jugglers. As far as, I don't know. Why would you want to meet me? Why would you want to tell me? And so I don't know how to take that. But when when somebody, especially our last few weeks on the air, when somebody who is 45 years old has kids that are having kids, and they say to you, I listened to you on my way to school because your show was in the car when my dad was driving us to school. And I'm like, well, there is 3 generations right now that are listening to me. And the only thing I could pass it along, just let the young ones know, just keep them listening. Right. And so that was the real cool thing right up to the end. If you looked at our demo, I think there was one ratings period, or last couple of ratings period, Haney and I were number 1 18 plus with men. You could take a 65-year-old and a 20-year-old, and we did just as well. And that is a credit to not necessarily how talented you are, but pure longevity, where you've influenced generations of lives. And you hope awesome. You gave them a little bit of entertainment. But please, I'm right. If we were in a pond, we're right above the silt level at the bottom. That's the way I look at it.
Well, you have a good friend that I have the same good friend. And like, I said, we'd hear people talking about us, and then we would, tell them who we were.
Right.
I remember all the time I'd go out to lunch with Jim Sion.
Mm-hmm.
And we couldn't sit down for more than 2 minutes. And somebody would come up and go, oh my God, you're my favorite weather guy. And they'd go on.
And they were old ladies too.
Yeah.
Always.
Big with the old ladies.
You could not finish lunch when you were eating with Jim Sion.
Well, it helps that he's a face on television where
of course. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty humble guy. And I told you, we don't know how to take compliments. They don't see us. He was seen on television and he loved it. He loved being recognized. He loved people coming up to him, the old ladies who watched his forecast every single day. He loved it. He loved it. That's why he loved playing the tuba at the ball games. He loved it. If I was in a room, I'd hide in the corner. I don't want that. He loved it.
And he's still doing it. He's out, because he took his tuba out to New Orleans. Now he's, back doing television again.
Yeah, good for him. I mean, you always go back to, look, you and I and you too, Bill, we have no business doing this.
No.
No. But you know what? If it's in your blood, like, and I give you a chance to plug my podcast right now.
Yeah, we want to do that for sure.
Beyond Mount Rushmore. I take a kind of, me and my buddy Jeff Hickox, longtime DJ at B103.9, and we just go and look at because I love history and presidential history, and we just take a look at the wild and bizarre things that they won't teach you in history class. I know we have awesome. One episode up now. We got more in the can. We're going to try to do it for as long as we can, but I don't care personally if one person listens to it or 10,000 people listen to it. There's something in my bloodstream that says, I don't know if it's ego. I don't know if it's just my DNA makeup. I got to go and broadcast something. And I don't care if one person listens to it or a bunch of people. I have to get it out of my system. And it doesn't matter where it happens. So I retire after 42 years in the business, and an opportunity comes up to do a podcast. Hell yeah, let's do it. Because it's in our blood.
Yep.
Bill, there's a lot better things you could be doing right now. But you want to do this. You enjoy it.
But you want to do it. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I was thinking, like you said, I don't know what it is about that. But I guess it's, they always say, at least lately, that it's like IQ is not the only measure of intelligence. There's emotional intelligence, there's relationship intelligence, there's all kinds of different musical intelligence. You can be a dummy, but be a genius when it comes to playing the guitar or whatever. I think for people like us, it's a communications intelligence. We like to, because I play pickleball 3 times a week now. I don't, I'm an old guy. I got old friends. We play.
I don't have a pickleball court near me.
It's awesome. It's the most fun you can have with your clothes on. But I still to this day am out there coaching and teaching and talking to the people that I'm playing with. It's like, oh, have you tried this? Have you done that? And then I'm sitting on the sidelines and I'm kibitzing and I'm making calls and I'm like, once a radio guy, you can't stop talking, Bill, can you? It's just like you said, it's built in somewhere that it's like, I'm going to communicate whether my audience is 2 people on a pickleball court or 10,000 on a radio station. It doesn't matter.
But do you know, and you guys have to, you've had to have known them. And I said there's a lot of people that want at the time, I don't know what it is now, maybe they want podcasts now, but at the time there was a lot of people, hey, how do you get into that business? How do you become a broadcaster? What do you got to do? And I always came to the conclusion that there were 3 types of broadcasters, 3 types. The ones which I think the 3 of us fall into, maybe a little less for you, BJ, but and you can expound on it. And it's just the 3 types. Is I like to communicate, create theater of the mind, create an emotion, create all, and just I have to do it. There are others that get into the business that love to be the MC going up on stage and having that micro. How y'all doing? Hey, you ready to rock? I don't want to do that. I call those the hey, look at me people. They got into the business because they like the attention.
Right.
I think the 3 of us primarily got into the business, like you were saying, Bill, to teach, to get a message out, to make your brain work, use your imagination,
storyteller,
have a fun, laugh. And then there's the 3rd ones that never stay in the business very long, but they all ask you, how do you get in that business? The ones that love to hear themselves. And these are usually your part-timers that, they get their big chance to fill in during the night show and will record the last half hour of their show so they can get in their car, race home, turn on the radio and hear their voice and let their friends hear them on the radio. See, there I am. And they recorded their last break so they can hear themselves.
Right.
And then, so those are the 3, the creative theater of the mind, the art of radio.
Yes.
The hey, look at me's, and the ones that just like hearing their voice. And we're doing this at our age. Now I know that BJ is the oldest here. You're what, 80? And Bill, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 63.
I'm 60. I'm between the 2 of you. I'm 68.
And my next birthday, I'm 70.
70.
Are you?
Yes.
And I clown around, but the fact of the matter is that you're still around at 70s. You know what? Kiss the sky. That's an amazing thing.
Right.
But we're doing this because we have to do it.
Yes. Yes. There is something about it, like you said, storyteller, teacher, whatever. Yeah. Yes.
Well, even from junior high, I played in bands. And I was kind of the front guy. I was a drummer, and you never see a drummer as the front guy.
You're a little bit of the, hey, look at me. That's why I prefaced it, and it's not bad. You got to have people like you. No. But you loved doing the magic. You loved being in front of the band. You loved all of that stuff. Yeah. You loved your comedy. That's what you love.
Yeah, I'm an entertainer. I've been an entertainer.
Right. There it is. That's the word.
Yeah. And I'm gonna go back to my podcast when we talked about my book that's coming out, because I'm writing a book right now.
Am I in it?
Maybe you will be. I don't know. I might get you in now. But what it is, as a small child, I was sickly, and so to fit in, I was always the funny guy. I was always the entertainer. I wasn't the football player. I wasn't the basketball player. So I had to fit in by telling jokes and be the fun guy, and the entertaining guy. And that's how I got my friends. And that's how I stayed out of fights, by, being the entertainer.
Sure.
And so I've been an entertainer all my life. And I think it maybe came from my sickness too, because I was going to go into drama and acting, had a full scholarship to go to be a performer. And I was working part-time at a radio station in high school. And the general manager, of course, at a small town came up to me and says, you know what? I think you do it. You're a good broadcaster. And in this business, it's all about experience. I got a full-time afternoon job. I'd like to give it to you. And I gave up a full ride at a college and stayed in my little small town radio station and took the afternoon show.
Oh, that's the fork in the road.
That is.
And you
That's
took
a big
it.
one.
What about you, Bill? How did you get started in the business? What drove you into broadcasting?
I was always the storyteller, always. I was the editor of the high school newspaper. I was going to college for a journalism degree. Still had earned a journalism degree, I should say. But about 2 years in, ended up taking a broadcast writing class because you had to take all the different kinds of writing, magazine, newspaper, radio, television. You had to take all of that. And found a little dorm-based radio station, literally closed-circuit radio that broadcast to about 3 dorms on one of the at Ohio University, Athens, Ohio, 45701. And I literally had the light bulb moment of, oh my God, they will pay me to talk rather than write. And that was my fork in the road. And then I worked for the college radio station, junior, senior year. And the guy that I worked with, who was the grad level student advisor to the AM radio station, it was public, NPR stations, AM, FM, TV. The grad level guy who was the program director left my senior year, went to Florida, called me the year after I graduated and said, "Hey, I'm in Fort Myers, Florida. Why don't you come work for me?" And he was at what before it was K-Rock, when it was Super Q.
What is Super Q?
Super Q. He was the PD at Super Q and said, "Why don't you come to work for me in Fort Myers, Florida?" I said, "Where the hell is that?" He said, "Find Fort Lauderdale and go straight west."
Yep, because there wasn't a hell of a lot over in Fort Myers.
I literally I flew from Columbus to go down and see him, flew from Columbus, Ohio to Fort Myers, Florida, and it was at Page Field where they pushed the stairs up to the plane and opened the door.
Yep.
And I will remember to this day the smell of the swamp coming into that airplane going, "Oh my God, I'm in Bogota, freaking Colombia." And walked down this, and the rest is history. I mean, worked for Super Q, worked for B103 with Paul Conrad, and then BJ Odom came along. There you go. And they put us together, and the rest is history. But yeah, always a storyteller and a reporter. So yeah.
But you bring it up. Somebody was going to pay you to talk.
Pay me to talk.
And that's the problem I think our generation of broadcasters have with this podcast stuff. Everybody can podcast, and you have to sink your money into the board, into the camera, into the microphones, and you hope just by people listening to you, you might be able to make a couple of bucks off of it. You don't know. You're not looking to make, but when you first heard people doing podcasts, it was, and I said it at the beginning of this. Wait, you're not a professional,
right?
I'm paid to talk. They're paying me. I'm not paying somebody else. I'm not paying any kind of fees for a platform. I'm being paid, and I think for me, that was like a hurdle I had to get over, because talking with Gentry, BJ's son, who runs an empire.
Yes.
This is the future, because we might have 15,000 people we're broadcasting to on a morning show or an afternoon show. This has the potential to reach millions and millions around the world. And if there is 1/10 of 1% of the population around the world that this interests, whether it's talking about heart transplants, whether it's telling stories, but if there's 1/10 of 1% of people around the world that have access to this, you're going to have more people than you could ever have dreamed listen to you on a radio station.
Yep.
And
now let's do the Stan story. What got you into this business?
It was by sheer accident, because I don't have a degree in radio or broadcasting. I got my degree in psychology, and I got it from the University of Central Florida. But I was living in Palm Bay, Florida. I had just gotten out of going to school in Boca Raton, And a buddy of mine, I was 19, and a buddy of mine said, why don't you come down to the radio station in Melbourne, which was WFIT, the Florida Institute of Technology. And back then, they were first of all, one of the nationally recognized student radio stations, and they had a paid staff. And they would do like it was old time radio. They would have a performance room. So if you were a country band, a rock band, you could go and broadcast, and they would do a live, like old style radio performance.
Cool.
And that night that I came down, first time I ever saw a radio station in my life, and they were doing a bluegrass show in the performance studio, and the engineer was behind the glass working the levels and stuff. And they had gone to a break, and we're all out in the hallway looking through the big window at them. And the guy in the band comes out and he said, we're getting ready to wrap up. Is there anybody out here that can read and say thank you for being with us tonight? We want to thank our sponsors. We want to, and somebody pointed to somebody in the hallway and said, you do it. And they said, I don't want to do it. Stan, you do it. And I'm like, sure. I had no fear. And I said, sure, I'll go do it.
Right.
And I walked in there and read the thanks that the bluegrass band had and all that. And as I walked out, the operations manager was coming down the hall, and he said, do you want to work from 3 to 6 in the morning and have that shift? I said, sure. And the rest and I realized that I loved radio so much,
right,
and that it was in my blood. I took the advice of every professor I had in college and said, do not major in communications, radio broadcast, journalism. Major in something completely else, because you're going to need it, because you're going to lose your job in radio and you need something to fall back on. I said, all right, I'll get my degree in psychology with a minor in sociology and just have fun at and so by the time I went to UCF, I was working at their radio station. Then I started working at jobs in Orlando, and the rest is history.
Wow.
Yeah. All right.
Wow. Isn't that interesting?
Sports, I was doing news. I was doing jazz shows. I was doing everything.
Yeah, we've all done. Isn't that interesting that, I mean, if you look, you're a psychology major, you'll know this. If you look at the list of things that people fear, I mean, not like the dying in a car wreck kind of, I mean, like personal fear, speaking in public before an audience is like they'd rather have root canal surgery than speak to a crowd of people. And why doesn't that apply to us?
It doesn't. Very quick, I got to tell you this. I'm sorry, I'm hogging your show. How long is this supposed to go?
No, you're fine. We got as long as you want, but go ahead.
Of course, I only get in trouble if we go maybe over an hour and a half. You go, I got to pay for all this time. You know, I got to pay for all this.
Well, what are we at right now? Because I got a really good story about.
Tell it.
I was at UCF, and I was in an elective course. It was mass communication. I was already in radio. And one of the people in the class was one of the star football players for the UCF Knights. I don't remember who it was, but he was huge. He was 6'3", 270 something pounds, one of the most intimidating people there were. And when he walked into a room, everybody knew it. And he was a star, so they all thought he was a little bit of a celebrity and all that. And so he had to take the mass communications class because they would give the football players, easy stuff to get credits. Just make a speech, a persuasive speech or something. Well, I used to get a kick out of it because they would give me the assignment and I wouldn't write or prepare for it. I'd just go up and ad-lib it, and I'd have no problem. Right. And I watched this football player for the University of Central Florida, the Golden Knights, go up and freeze. His knees were knocking. He couldn't stop from shaking his hands and couldn't get a word out edgewise. And the professor came up and said, it's okay. Go ahead and sit down. He could have crushed you like a can, and everybody knew him, but he could not speak in public. Right. Again, it goes back to being hardwired. You either can do it or you can't.
I agree.
All right, I'm done telling stories.
That's awesome.
Although
what?
I've got more, but
we need to bring you back because I mean, I think when you think about Southwest Florida radio, there's not, you might think of, C. David Bennett and Gina Birch as a pair. You might think of BJ and Bill, but Stan, you probably have had the longevity in Fort Myers because you kept going after us.
Right.
33 years at one station.
Yeah. So, yeah, because I left a couple times. I went up to South Carolina. I went up to Greenville, South Carolina for a while. I went up to Orlando for a while. But, I always came home to Southwest Florida. That was
That's the rule, BJ, don't you?
You have to come back.
It doesn't. There's something that happens if you work in Fort Myers in Southwest Florida. You can get the dream job you wanted in Detroit, Chicago, LA.
Dream Detroit. I don't know about that.
You know what? Let me ask you right now, Bill, if they told you take the job in Detroit, we'll keep you in the suburbs and pay you mid six figures, you're going.
Tomorrow.
But for whatever reason,
yes.
And I can give you tons of examples. People leave thinking they're going to the greener pastures, and they come back to Southwest Florida. It's almost like there's some kind of evil magnet that goes and drags you back in here.
Well, I have worked in a couple of major markets, and it's kind of funny when you get to a major market, the people have the same gripes, have the same bitches, and it's the same thing. It's just on maybe a bigger stage and a bigger paycheck. But in all honesty,
right,
you can work in Podunk, Iowa, or you can work, in New York City. There's
only one place, BJ, where it's different. And again, I come up and have just a 2-minute story. Haney and I were shopping ourselves around probably about 15, 18 years ago. And we had an opportunity to get a job at the FM rock station in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Ooh.
They wanted to hire us.
Wow.
And it was a dream job. It was a high-paying job, and they wanted Haney and I. And Haney and I were like, this is going to be great. We live in Hawaii. The program director called us up, and he said, it's between you guys and another team that is local to Hawaii. And he said, I like you guys better. He said, but you don't stand a chance here. I said, why? He said, because you're a haole, meaning that you're not Hawaiian. Oh. And all you have to do is mispronounce a street, a school, a holiday, Kawalakalakalua Day.
Yeah.
If you say it wrong, they will drive you out of town with torches. You have to know this area like the back of your hand. If you don't, you're going to fail. And he said, guys, you're loaded with talent. Find a job somewhere else. You do not want to come to Hawaii.
Wow.
And then I went and I found a friend of mine who lived in Hawaii for a decade. And she told me, she said, you did the right thing. As much as it's paradise, as much as you love to see the pictures, and I know BJ was a big Hawaii 5-0 fan, and Jack Lord and all that, but you're stuck on an island. The highway only goes so far, and if you have to see family, if you want to go somewhere, you're on an island. And after a little while, when the novelty wears off, you're trapped.
Yep.
Okay.
Which, by the way, brings, of course, the perennial question: why do they have interstate highways in Hawaii?
They do big highways too. Interstates.
It's a joke. It's a bad joke. But yes, I get it. Yes, and but we did the same thing. I mean, you know how many different ways can you say the Caloosahatchee River or anything like that? You hear it from people when they're like, okay, you're not from around here, are you? I mean, so there's always that process. But yeah, Hawaii, I can imagine it would be better.
Every single holiday, every single street, every single school, every single group has some Hawaiian name. And if you looked at it in writing, you saw how it was spelled out. It's still not how it's pronounced.
Of course. Of course.
Oh wow, I'd really be bad there. I can't
be-
even
yeah.
pronounce American names.
Yeah, it'd be a mess for you. I do want to say as we wrap this thing up, because I know I've gone way too long.
Okay.
I left 96K Rock, retired from 96K Rock in the end of August. So September 1st was my first day off the air after 42 years.
Woo.
And I do have the podcast, but we only have one episode that just came out last week. This is the first show that I have done at all since I stepped away from the microphone on September 1st. And I know BJ has been asking me for a long time to come on your podcast. And I keep brushing him off. And finally, when he sent an email to the radio station email, the Stan and Haney email, and said, will you come on my show? And you know what? I've said no to him so many times. I said yes, and I'm glad I did. It's great to talk to you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, a lot of memories, and I'd love to have you back. You know, maybe
Absolutely.
you'll want to come back next time now.
Sure, I'll come back with you guys. You know,
Of course.
But you know what? I'll come back, Bill, and you can write this down on a piece of paper. I'll come back on the with BJ and Bill when I start making that BJ Oda money.
Oh yeah.
When I start getting my beak wet on that, when I get a little taste of BJ Oda money, then I'll be coming back on this show.
Well, I'll tell you what, though.
It's just like the drug trade, brother. The first one's always free.
Yep.
Since I gave someone a little bit of money up front to start his business that has exploded and brought Shaquille O'Neal on board with the company, let's just say I don't think you'll ever be able to make BJ Oda money from this company.
I didn't
working
33
today.
years ago, and I'm not now. Guys, I'll see you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Stan.
All right, Stan. Take care. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great show. We had a fabulous time talking with Stan here, and we appreciate it. And we do have to have him back. I mean, all our radio friends, you know, they're great. They're awesome. They're great stories. So there you go.
You know what? I can't believe I'm telling you this, but you know what you might want to do?
What's
We've
that?
talked about this before, because this ticker's not going to last forever. When it goes out, maybe you should just say, Stan, we'll make it the Stan and Bill show, or the Bill and Stan
Bill and
show,
Stan, yeah.
you know, and we can continue, and one of you can play me,
Sure.
somebody. No, he was fun to have on.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
I
he
knew
was he was more the in Stan and Haney, he was more the BJ than the Bill. He was like the front guy, and Haney was kind of the side. I'm not gonna side, whatever you want to call it, the sidekick or whatever. But yeah, so that would work. That would work. We'll do that. So yeah. Yeah, you got a long time to go, BJ Odom. You're not going anywhere.
I hope not, but you never know.
You're on a long-term contract with 0 outs. You cannot escape. All right. Well, we've gone well past the hour, but it was well worth it. That was awesome. I don't know what we're going to do to top this, but we'll find out. Now, I will say, no pressure, but I am talking to your ghostwriter on Wednesday. We record this on a Monday. Wednesday, I have an appointment to talk with Christine, your ghostwriter. So,
So next Monday we can have a really interesting story of Bill spilling the beans and what beans he spilled.
Be nice to me. You better believe it. All right, everybody. Everybody else, we love you. We appreciate it. Go out, leave that 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Visit us at Facebook. Just do a search for BJ and Bill, the podcast on Facebook. You'll find us there. Wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, doesn't matter. Leave us the review. We'd appreciate it. Until then, it's just up to BJ Odom to say,
see ya.
Take a ride back in time when the airways were golden and the DJ shined. 2 mics, 2 guys, and a whole lot of laughs. Living like legends, bringing stories back. No script, no rules, just telling it all. From theme park tales to a pickleball call. If you